This podcast does not provide medical advice. Please listen to the complete disclosure at the end of the recording.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everyone Dies, the podcast. I'm Marianne Matzo.
And I'm Charlie Navarrete.
Please grab your beverage of choice, something nummy, or just something that makes you happy to snack on. And thank you for spending the next hour with us as we talk about Beethoven, Emily Bronte, and meat pie in our first half. In the second half, I'm going to talk with you about what to expect in terms of screaming. How about screening? Yes. Well, you could scream during your screening for memory loss, but, that's really not going to bode well. And in our third half, we have interviewed Sarah Weaver, who writes the comic strip Adventures with Ra. And so you get to hear that interview.
Okay.
So Charlie's going to be talking about Emily Bronte. Don't ask me why, but I thought our recipe...
Oh, wait a minute. You just said, don't ask you why. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
So I thought our recipe this week could be one of her favorites, meat pie. And it's not the, what's that play where the barber cuts off people?
Sweeney Todd.
Yeah, it's not that kind of
It's not that kind of meat pie. No. Okay,
no.
Got it. So no Sondheim here. Got it. All right, very good.
Right. So I was reading on the internet, so it must be true,
right,
that while in Belgium in 1843...
She had chocolate.
I bet she did, Charles. I bet she did. If I was in Belgium in 1843, I'd have chocolate. But Emily...
Maybe she ran into Hercule Poirot.
Was that the same time?
Maybe she ran into, in Belgium, but ran into him before he was born. Or before Agatha Christie was born. All right, this is going nowhere. Go on.
Which is where a lot of our stuff goes.
Yes.
So Emily wrote to her sister, Charlotte Bronte, saying that she'd rather be in Haworth House in Haworth, Yorkshire, making this pie than be abroad. So this recipe comes from Hidden England, where it also says you can use chicken or turkey breast in place of beef. So when I was reading the recipe, it's sort of like a beef Wellington that has a lot more layers. But it made Emily happy, and therefore it makes us happy. So the recipe's on the website. Let us know what you think. Charles?
Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, not its real name, was published in 1802. It was the Piano Sonata number 14 in C-sharp minor, opus 27, number 2. Kind of just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's what Beethoven I would name the song.
It. Yes, yeah. Well, but then he gave it an official name, Sonata Quasi una Fantasia.
Oh, that's Fantasia.
Fantasia, yes. There you go. It's fantastic. About 5 years later, not 5 years later, but 5 years after Beethoven died, a German critic wrote that the sonata reminded him of the moonlight shining on Lake Lucerne in Switzerland, thus the Moonlight Sonata. Beethoven said that the emotion of the song came to him at the bedside of a friend who had died unexpectedly. But Edwin Fischer, a Swiss classical pianist and conductor, states he found notes by Beethoven in a library in Vienna by Candlestick with Professor Plum, for all you fans of Clue, which supported the notion that the first movement of the piece, known the world over, which I would hum if I could just remember it, so thank goodness we have music in the background, though we didn't pay any royalties, was inspired by Mozart's Don Giovanni's murder scene. Ta-ta-ta. If this is true, then the first movement is a death scene, which takes us to the poem A Death Scene by Emily Bronte. Now, Beethoven died in 1827. Bronte's poem was published in 1846. What? No, please, don't make me read an excerpt.
But Charlie, please. What? Would you?
Oh, wow, the switchboard is lit up, ladies and gentlemen, so I will heed the call. Psst. Then his eyes began to weary, weighed beneath a mortal sleep, and their orbs grew strangely dreary, clouded even as they would weep. so I knew that he was dying. Stooped and raised his languid head, felt no breath and heard no sighing, so I knew that he was dead. So, if you want to hear all of it, please go to everyonedies.org. That's dies.org for a link for the complete poem, the recipe, and additional resources for this program. We appreciate your questions and anything else you want to tell us, within reason. You can email us at mail@everyonedies.org. And again, that's dies.org. Please join our Facebook group, Everyone Dies. This time you have to spell out everyone. So that name again on Facebook group, Everyone Dies. And please remember to rate and review this podcast. Molly, our unsung hero and Twitter correspondent, who is hoping you will follow us on Twitter and repost her tweets so that we can do something. Let me see here. How about we can stop making up names for her? Nah. Marianne, what's up?
What? Oh.
In our second half?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I was moonlighting Sonata in here and thinking about meat pie. But I will return to the second half of our show, which is about what to expect if you're being evaluated for loss of memory. Now, let me just start by saying you can't walk into a healthcare practitioner's office and have them say to you, you know what, you have Alzheimer's. Because if they say that to you, you really need to find another healthcare practitioner. It's more complicated than that, and you can't tell what's going on with someone just by looking at them. Now, we can have suspicions. We can think, I think this might be going on, so I need to do some testing. And I've had situations. I can remember a student, Charlie, 25, 30 years ago, who came in and who said, my dad's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And I said, oh, well, what did they do to diagnose him? And she said, well, nothing. He went in, he had just retired and, was having some memory problems. And he went into his primary care practitioner who said, you have Alzheimer's disease. And she says, he's feeling like, I don't really want to go through this. Like he wanted to end his life. I said, no. He needs to go to a neurologist and to be checked, to have a series of tests to see what it is that's going on. You can't do it that way. So he ended up going to a neurologist, ended up being diagnosed with depression, started on an antidepressant, and is fine. So
okay, great.
You have to go through the testing. So I thought what I would do today is kind of go through a list of what you would expect or what you should expect from your healthcare practitioner in terms of do you have something like Alzheimer's or one of the dementing illnesses. The importance of early detection in terms of cognitive screening requires is now actually required by Medicare and Medicaid as part of your screening. So now, if Medicare and Medicaid is paying for your physical, it now requires that your healthcare practitioner do a screening for memory cognitive issues. And so what they're going to be looking for in terms of that is they'll look at past and current medical problems and concerns, look at all the medicines that you've been on currently and those that you've taken in the past. Ask about your diet, ask about your use of alcohol, what other medical conditions are present in your family. And with your permission, the doctor or healthcare practitioner may talk to family members to see if they need to get any additional information in terms of how you're doing at home. Do you need help with things that maybe you're not admitting to yourself? They'll look at your blood pressure, your temperature, your pulse, listen to your heart, and look at what your overall health is. Then, if you go in and you have some cognitive changes, they're going to do some blood work. They're going to check for your thyroid hormone or vitamin deficiency to rule out infection or to check how your organs, such as your liver and kidneys, are functioning. They're going to do a urinalysis. When you urinate into a cup and look for infection and see how your kidneys are functioning. And they might do a spinal tap, not the band, but where they put a little.
Good.
Gotcha.
I'm glad you clarified. I was just about to ask that. Yes.
Charlie, we have known each other.
Have I become so familiar?
Far too long, Charles.
Yeah.
So, where they put a needle into the spine, get some cerebral spinal fluid out.
Ooh, that sounds like fun.
It's not. I mean, it doesn't really hurt, but it's, you gotta lay real still.
Yeah, but the fun of it, yeah.
They do an analysis of the proteins that are in there. And, not always done like really at the very, very beginning of a workup, but it might depending on how your symptoms are. So the next thing they do also is a depression screening, because the symptoms of depression and the symptoms of early cognitive changing are really the same. You really can't tell the difference. You forget things. You might wake up on unusually early in the morning, so that your sleep-wake cycle is like really way off. You might put things down, not remember where they are, just kind of walk around in a fog. Those are all symptoms of depression. And those are all symptoms of early cognitive changes. So if somebody's young, you think, oh, gosh, they must be depressed. If somebody's old, you think, oh, my God, they must have cognitive changes. Well, that's not how it works. So in terms of depression screening, they might ask questions like symptoms of depression. Like I said, how are you feeling? Are you feeling blue? Are you feeling like ending your life? Trouble thinking, trouble remembering, trouble like even sitting reading a book. Somebody with depression just doesn't even have the ability to kind of follow and stay with a book. A lot of sleeping can be one of the symptoms also. Then they'll do a battery of mental cognitive status tests where they're going to evaluate your memory, your problem-solving skills, and other thinking skills. Some of these tests are really, really short. They can ask you about the date and time, ask you to remember a short list of words, or to do simple math calculations. And some of the other tests can involve more time, can be more complex problem solving. But all of those tests give information to the practitioner regarding how your brain is working, how you're figuring things out, how you're using your brain. Some healthcare practitioners may ask you to participate in a more comprehensive evaluation known as a neuropsychological exam, which uses multiple tests and evaluates many cognitive areas, including like executive function, judgment, attention, language. We talked last week about, if you found a stamped address envelope, what would you do with it? Or another test is take this piece of paper in your right hand, fold it in half, and put it on the floor. So that is one 3-step command. If done correctly, that's what you want to do. Yeah. Some practitioners don't do it correctly, and they give 3 1-step commands by saying, take this in your right hand, wait for the person to do it, fold it in half, wait for the person to do it, put it on the floor. So that's not, done correctly, but, that's what they're asked to do. Or subtract 7 from 100, and then 7 from that, and then 7 from that, and then 7 from that. And I've looked at that for, we've been doing that for like the last 20 years. And I think that as the boomers and younger than that, they're going to have to change that, because I don't think our math is that good to be able to do that in our heads. Where the older generation, that was like kind of whipped into them, so they're much better at that. When I actually do that test, I have it written down, because I know I won't remember it correctly.
So you have the answers in advance. Got it. Okay.
I do, because I'm the clinician and I can. So the other thing they can do is brain imaging. And imaging technology is used to evaluate the structure and the function of the brain. So they'll do either or both a CT, computed tomography, or an MRI, which is a magnetic resonance imaging, which are used to see the structure of the brain. And in older people, with this test, you will usually see brain shrinkage. It's just normal. Our brains get smaller.
Mm-hmm.
You look really interested.
No,
Yeah.
Well,
right.
well,
your brain
actually, when you said smaller, it's. I don't know. It's at first I thought I know I've seen some horror movie, the shrinking whatever brain or something like that. But I know it's not everyone, but as people get older, also their bodies start to shrink. And as soon as you said that, then my other thought was, just losing cognitive thinking, losing memories, because it shrinks, and it's just. The beginning of the end.
Well, the beginning of the end is the day that you're born.
That you're born, yeah, I know that. But I'm speaking specifically about.
So think about, how you get shorter. Does that mean
Right.
you can't walk? No, it means that gravity has taken its toll. You might have some aches and pains, but you still can walk. With the brain structure, it's not like, oh my God, it's the size of a pea now. I mean, unless it was maybe the size of a walnut when you started, but it shrinks, but it's not like, oh my God, it's just so small. No, but it's a normal thing, and it doesn't change function. It's just normal. So when people read their CT or their MRI, and they say, and it says, I don't know, 5% brain shrinkage, and you go, oh my God, my brain is, shrinking. It's like, that's normal. That part's normal. But they can rule out conditions that may cause symptoms similar to Alzheimer's disease, but require different treatments, such as a brain tumor or an aneurysm or bleeding in the brain or nerve injury or a stroke or buildup of fluid in the brain. The brain is a complex organ. Lots of stuff can happen to it, and it can happen without it being a big dramatic thing like a stroke. It can happen very, very gradually. I had a person I worked with back in Massachusetts who ended up divorcing her husband because he started having these outbursts of anger. And she's like, I don't know what's going on with him. And they got worse and they got worse and they got worse. And, he didn't go to the doctor. And she divorced him. And then as time went on, it got really bad, and found out that he had, I don't know if he had some sort of brain tumor, or I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something in his brain that was making him behave that way. And, that wasn't in his control. I guess maybe if he'd gone and gotten it diagnosed, they maybe could have done something about it. An MRI scan yields a higher resolution images, can usually take a little bit longer than a CT scan. And so you might get an MRI to provide more information about any abnormality that might be seen on the CT scan. Now, another test that they can do is a PET scan. It's a positron emission tomography. And this scan is used to evaluate the brain function. So what they do is there's a radioactive tracer that's injected into the bloodstream. And what they do is they look while they're doing the scan, and they analyze the movement of the tracer. And it helps the doctor to evaluate the functions such as blood flow through the brain and the brain's use of glucose. So, and they use the PET scan and the cerebral spinal fluid from the spinal tap that I talked about earlier. They use that together because there's biomarkers that can be used to diagnose Alzheimer's disease by testing for amyloid plaques and for tau proteins. Now, in the past, like 20 years ago, that wasn't something that they were even able to do, but now they're able to do that. So that's another way that they can look at it. So after all of the screening is done, the practitioner will consider other causes of cognitive decline, such as bad effects of the medication that you might be taking, trauma, depression, vitamin B12, folate or thyroid deficiency. Symptom-directed treatment is more effective when it's started earlier in the disease process. There's teaching to adapt healthy behaviors that can potentially delay a person's decline, and participation in research studies are an option for those in the early stages of dementia. So in the past, it was believed that nothing could be done to delay the onset of dementia or slow its progress. However, research on lifestyle modification that may diminish risk factors for dementia is growing. And so some of the recommendations are refraining from smoking, maintaining a healthy diet, getting adequate sleep, participating in cognitively stimulating activities. So things that make your brain work, crossword puzzles, Sudoku, anything, any kind of thing like that forces your brain to solve a problem and to work, to do specific tasks.
Right.
Interacting with others socially and exercising. So all the things that some of us really don't enjoy doing, or because of the coronavirus haven't been doing, can help us stay healthy in terms of dementia risk. But, the reality of the situation is that there's also a genetic component in there. There's not enough yet known to be able to say, if you do this, that you absolutely won't have that. So you're going to have people who say, I did everything I was supposed to, and I still have this. And it's like, that's true. And
that's genetics.
That happens, and that sucks. So,
yeah. Use a technical term. Yes, exactly. The medical term. Yes, that sucks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they taught us that in nursing school. So that's what you can expect if they don't do all of that, Charles. Mm-hmm. You go find yourself another practitioner, because they can't look at you and just say you have dementia.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Maybe you have good teeth, or maybe you have a nice tie. But yeah, not that you have dementia. No, they can't, just by looking at you.
Do you have any questions about that?
No. It just makes me think of just getting older, and what happens to your body, and that's all. I think once in a while, we're born into the world basically helpless, and depending on any one individual, many people leave the same way.
Yeah.
You need not the kindness of strangers, but you need help. Sometimes real help, but other times just assistance. And then other people just take it upon
somebody
themselves.
To hold your hand.
Yeah.
And us letting other people hold our hands, that's also nice.
I know with that, what you just said about just letting people hold your hand, I come across people, I talk about the podcast, and how we really advocate for people to prepare, not only documents, but as you were saying, physically, mentally, even small things like a puzzle. People just keep coming up with what I consider excuses. Even something with, it's cold outside, and now specifically, COVID's out there. I said, yeah, but you know what? Even if you just walk around your small New York apartment, from the couch to the kitchen to your bed to the couch just a little triangle, like, a 5-10 minute walk in your apartment. That's movement. Maybe, yeah, just move. You don't have to go out to a park and get yourself out to a park and a long walk. No, even just moving around the apartment. As you said about a crossword puzzle. I mean, there are puzzles at all levels. Sudoku, picking up a book. If you have a computer, just look up some topic you like online and read it. Okay, I'm finished. But
Okay.
move, do something. Move your body, move your mind. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
So in our third half, we have a real unusual thing. I had the pleasure of interviewing a girl named Sarah Weaver. And Sarah, when she was 21 years old, maybe she wasn't even that old. I'm sorry, Sarah, I forgot how old you were, but young, like 20. Her sister went on like a airplane sightseeing thing, and the plane went down. And it took them a while to find the plane, and it had burst into flames after it had crashed. And her sister and everybody on board were dead. And it was a complete surprise. Sarah was the youngest. The sister was the oldest. And as a family, they didn't know how to cope with it. And Sarah didn't know how to cope with this loss. And she talks about starting a cartoon series, and it's called Adventures with Ra. Now, Ra was her family nickname. Her name's Sarah, so they called her Ra.
Got it.
And so her comic strip is called Adventures with Ra, where she started to work through the death of her sister. And she says that it's about death, diarrhea, and oh my God, what's the third D? Depression? Sarah, you're going to kill me. I can't remember the third D, but depression sounds like it'd be good. As she works through these issues, and diarrhea's on there because she's got some bowel issues, so she works through those in her comic strip. And I know that all doesn't sound like it should go together, but she does these comic strip stories. So in our third half, let's listen to the interview with Sarah. And also on the webpage, there's her website and how to get a hold of her. So let's have a listen.
So today we're going to talk with somebody that, I don't know, maybe you guys are familiar with, but I never was. I was reading an article, don't ask me where, and I came across Sarah Weaver, who's a cartoonist, and who had her sister, her older sister, died in a plane crash when she was about 21 years old, when Sarah was 21 years old. And it was, as you can well imagine, very traumatic for Sarah and the whole family. And what Sarah started to do in terms of processing to deal with this death is she started drawing comics. And the comics are about the 3 Ds: death, depression, and diarrhea. So welcome, Sarah, and tell us why it's those 3 Ds that are featured in your cartoons.
Thank you so much, Marianne, for having me on the show. I'm really happy to be here. Yes, so the 3 Ds are the theme of my comics, and of course I started writing them after my sister Melissa died, and they started out as just a way for me to kind of draw on my journaling and sketches and make them into comics and kind of cohesive stories to share my experiences in going through life as a young person after she died. But after I put the first story out into the world and let a friend read it, he really encouraged me to keep writing. And he said, I think there are lots of other people who have, not the exact same situations that you're in, but are dealing with death and depression and anxiety, and might really relate to some of the things that you're talking about. And so I kind of broadened the scope of my comics to include stories of life growing up as one sibling in a family of 4, and what it was like with kind of a bigger family, and also my experiences with living with irritable bowel syndrome, which is something I've had since I was a kid.
So there we know now where the diarrhea part came from.
Yeah.
And so you've been drawing and publishing these comics for how long now?
It's been about 4 years that I've been doing this, but 2020 was my first year doing this full time as my job, and I'm so excited to be doing it and to see where the comics take me and what I can do, and I want to reach as many people as I can with the stories. And I'm really realizing how similar we are as human beings. We all have different stories, different upbringings, but so many of our feelings are the same. And I think the more that we recognize that, the more we're helped in being able to move through some of the difficult situations in life.
So have you found that the cartoons are your best treatment for coping with death and depression? Or are there other things that you're doing?
Writing and drawing are definitely helpful to me. Making sure that I take care of my mental health, which includes exercise, is really important to me. Being able to spend time in nature outside, particularly in the mountains. I grew up in Montana, and I'm back living in Montana now, and just being able to be close to nature and be able to spend time outside it's really healing. It's relaxing. It's something my sister loved and that I got to share with her. And so the memories of it are kind of bittersweet at times, but they bring me peace.
Yeah. Do your parents read these cartoons?
They do. And I would say that at first they were a little uneasy or unsure of where I was going to be going with the stories and what types of things I was going to be sharing, but they've really come around to the idea of the comics and the 3Ds and the openness. I think sometimes the older generation's a little bit more, I don't know if this is true with you, but guarded with information, and I don't know if we're more used to, as millennials, sharing more about our lives and ourselves online publicly. It still feels weird for me to do it so much, but I just see it as a helpful thing, and I've appreciated it when other people are open and honest about what's going on in their lives, and so I kind of take strength from that and want to share my own stories for those reasons too.
As a nurse, we were always, told and taught, you have boundaries, you don't share about yourself, you don't talk about yourself. And now that I'm retired, it's sort of nice to be able to say, well, so this happened. I still, I don't know. I don't think I overshare, but I am much more likely to talk about situations that I've been through with family or friends or patients even. I don't say their name or what city or anything they're from. But there's so many experiences after so long that, you want to be able to talk about them so that we can learn from them and I can maybe unload them, I don't have to keep carrying them around.
Right. Yeah.
So is the cartoon called The Adventures with Ra?
Yes, they're called Adventures with Ra, and Ra is a nickname from childhood.
Okay. And where can people find these?
So my comics are on my website, which is adventureswithra.com, and I'm also on social media. I'm on Instagram at Adventures with Ra Comic, and on Facebook with the same username. I'm on TikTok as well. I've just started getting into making some short little videos, and I'm going to be trying to animate some more things in the future, which I hope will just be kind of purely for fun. Yeah, social media is a great way to reach out, and I try to answer people as quickly as I can.
That's great. Now, one of the things I read about you was that when your sister died, they reassigned her phone number. You want to talk a little about that?
Yes. So I, after she died, continued to call her and text her. And first it was just to hear her voice. I wanted to hear her voice now. And then one day somebody answered, and his name was Jeff. And I was so shocked that someone answered her phone. I didn't really know what to do, and so I hung up on him. But I kind of kept calling him at night. I was 21 at the time, and so I wasn't really taking care of myself, and I was drinking probably more than I should have. And at the end of nights, I would miss my sister, and so I would call her number, and I would get Jeff. And it was, the reality of the situation was upsetting to me because, of course, Verizon had reassigned her phone number and just given it to someone else. But I didn't really want to explain to Jeff why I was calling him. I just wanted, I think, to talk to someone. And so I pretended that we were friends and that we went way back. And, he usually hung up on me. And this only lasted for, I don't know, a couple of months in the summertime. But I have hope that someday Jeff will see the story and will read it and will understand why I was calling him, and we'll become friends, and it will be heartwarming.
Well, that would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yes.
I don't know, I would have hoped that Jeff would have said, okay, sister, why are you calling me? What's going on? But apparently he didn't do that, right?
No. But it's amazing, and since putting that story out there, it's one of my most popular comics. I've heard stories from other people who have continued to call loved ones who have passed away and or text them and have gotten responses from the new people who own the phone numbers now, and have either gotten positive responses or negative responses. And it's just kind of amazing. I didn't realize how universal of a thing that was, but of course it is. I mean, a phone number gets changed and someone else gets it. So
I've read about that too. And sometimes people are extremely kind and say, honey, you call me anytime you want. I'll talk to you. I'll be that person for you as best I can. And I think that's pretty wonderful.
Me too. Kindness is such a wonderful and beautiful thing, and I have no doubt of Jeff's character. I'm sure if I had only explained myself well to him and had known kind of how to deal with, the anxiety and depression that I was dealing with at the time better, he probably would have been kind to me too. Well,
21-year-olds aren't necessarily the best communicators. So that's a big ask for you to put on yourself. You're probably in a much better situation to be able to communicate that need now than you were then. So
right.
We're not going to totally blame Jeff, although we can if we want to. So are there any other things about your comics that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Let me see. I also, so as I was saying, I also write stories about childhood, and one of my recent stories that just went out is about, doesn't have anything to do with death, but it does have to do with something that my mom did to my Harry Potter books after my siblings and I left home. And so that's kind of a fun story for listeners to possibly go and check out. It's called Harry Potter Stories and Hero Mom Saves Day.
Well, I've never done anything bad to anybody's Harry Potter books. I just want to go on record. Although I'm sure my girls could give you tons of other stories of egregious mistakes they've made, but not with Harry Potter. Well, for our listeners, I'm going to post all of the contact information for you, Sarah, for your cartoons. And I signed up for Sarah's cartoons. So you guys can sign up on her webpage, Adventures with Vrah, VRAH.com. And Sarah said that we can post them to Everyone Dies, so you'll be able to follow them there. So thank you for spending time with me.
Thank you for listening. Please stay tuned for future episodes of Everyone Dies. Our thanks to executive producer, Major General Retired David Gillette, our producer Sandy, John, our technical advisor, Tom Hartman, our administrative advisor, Molly, our Twitter correspondent, and our friends, family, and our loyal listeners who are supporting our work at Everyone Dies. And make sure you catch Marianne's interviews on Passionate World Talk Radio Network. There's a link for it on our webpage. This is Charlie Navarrete.
And I'm Marianne Matzo, and we look forward to talking with you soon. Remember, every day is a gift.
This podcast does not provide medical advice. All discussion on this podcast, such as treatments, dosages, outcomes, charts, patient profiles, advice, messages, and any other discussion are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Always seek the advice of your primary care practitioner or other qualified health providers with any questions that you may have regarding your health. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard from this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Everyone Dies does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, practitioners, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned in this podcast. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast by persons appearing on this podcast at the invitation of Everyone Dies or by other members is solely at your own risk.